Picture this. You walk into a garden expecting the familiar. A few tomatoes, some cucumbers, a strawberry patch. But then, your jaw drops. Because sitting there in the soil, or dangling from a vine, is not the everyday produce you know. It's something out of fantasy. A strawberry the size of a baseball. A pumpkin you could row like a boat. A carrot long enough to double as a telephone pole. These giants blur the line between the edible and the unbelievable. They make us ask, what else is hiding in nature's playbook? Welcome to 15 giant fruits and vegetables that look unreal. And believe me, you'll want to stick around until the very end. Because the final entry? It's so massive. It could feed an entire town and still have leftovers. Number 15. The watermelon that weighed a quarter ton. Watermelon is already a symbol of summer. Pink flesh, black seeds. The sound of laughter as kids spit those seeds across the lawn. But this story takes summer fun into another dimension. In Tennessee, a farmer unveiled a 351-pound watermelon. To picture that, imagine stacking 3 grown men's weightlifting barbells, or hugging a full-sized refrigerator. That's what this single watermelon equaled. It wasn't simply heavy, it was beautifully grotesque. Its green stripes swirled across a lumpy oval body that barely fit on the back of a truck. When people saw it, they didn't reach for a knife. They reached for cameras. Crowds gathered as though it were a roadside attraction. And yet, it was edible. Inside was the same sweet, refreshing flesh you know. Only endless. One slice could feed 10 people. A single wedge could replace an entire picnic platter. The farmer chuckled when asked how to cut it. "A machete might work," he joked, "but I'd recommend a chainsaw." Here's the kicker. Watermelons keep breaking records year after year. Growers experiment with seed genetics, soil nutrients, and irrigation tricks. Experts say it's only a matter of time before a half-ton watermelon emerges. Imagine that. A fruit so massive you could sit inside its rind like a canoe. And if a watermelon can swell to such impossible size, what happens when a leafy cabbage gets the same treatment? Number 14. The cabbage that looked like a UFO. Cabbages aren't flashy. They're everyday vegetables, folded into slaws and stews, forgotten on the side of the plate. But in Palmer, Alaska, the cabbage becomes something else entirely. A green legend. Here, thanks to nearly 20 hours of summer sunlight, plants don't just grow. They explode. Photosynthesis runs on overdrive, producing vegetables so big they look fake. And among them, a 138-pound cabbage. When unveiled at the Alaska State Fair, the crowd gasped. The cabbage looked less like food and more like a UFO parked on the table. Its outer leaves stretched wider than car tires, curling upward like shields. A single leaf could blanket a dinner plate, and one head alone could make coleslaw for an entire wedding reception. Children hid behind it for photos, laughing as though it were a fort. Judges circled it with awe. And for Alaskans, it wasn't just a curiosity. It was pride. Proof that their land, their light, their soil could nurture something otherworldly. There's poetry in this too. The cabbage, once a symbol of wartime poverty, now reborn as a marvel. A reminder that even the plainest of vegetables can shine under the right conditions. But Alaska isn't the only place where giants roam. Travel to Europe, and you'll find a pumpkin so massive it doubled as a boat. Number 13. The pumpkin big enough for a boat. We think of pumpkins as whimsical. jack-o'-lanterns glowing on porches, pies baking at Thanksgiving. But the world's largest pumpkin? That's not whimsy. That's mythical. In Italy, growers unveiled a 2,749-pound pumpkin. That's heavier than a compact car, so wide it could barely squeeze through a barn door. Its orange skin was stretched taut, ribbed like armor plates on a giant beast. And people didn't just stare at it. They used it. Every autumn, pumpkin regattas are held where these colossal gourds are hollowed out, transformed into makeshift kayaks, and raced across lakes. Imagine paddling a floating pumpkin the size of a hot tub, waves lapping against its orange sides, while crowds cheer from the shore. Scientists say the genetics of pumpkins still hold untapped potential. With each record broken, growers are convinced the first 3,000-pound pumpkin is on the horizon. A pumpkin so enormous it might need a trailer of its own. But if pumpkins stretch outward, the next vegetable dives deep. So deep, it twists and curls like an orange serpent in the earth. Number 12. The carrot longer than your leg. Carrots are humble. Slim orange roots we snack on raw or toss into soup. But in the UK, one grower reimagined the carrot, not as food, but as a challenge. By constructing long vertical tubes of soil, carefully layered with nutrients, he guided the carrot's root deeper and deeper into the earth. He nurtured it like a prized athlete, guarding it from pests, ensuring it didn't snap under its own weight. The result? A carrot stretching over 20 feet long. Longer than a giraffe is tall. Longer than a city bus. Of course, it wasn't a neat orange spear. It twisted, split, coiled like a dragon's tail underground. When finally unearthed, it resembled some strange artifact, half plant, half myth. And while nobody would want to peel it for dinner, its significance was undeniable. It proved that even a vegetable we take for granted has no fixed limit. That with creativity, even the simplest root can turn into a world record. But while carrots stretch like serpents, strawberries swell like hidden jewels, and sometimes grow so large they need 2 hands just to hold. Number 11. The strawberry that needed 2 hands. Strawberries are the fruit of summer. Bright, fragrant, bite-sized. You pluck them by the handful, pop them into your mouth, savoring their sweetness. But in Israel, a farmer uncovered a strawberry that redefined the word bite-sized. It weighed nearly half a pound, about the size of a baseball. At first glance, it looked unnatural, almost alien. Several smaller strawberries had fused together during growth, forming one lumpy ruby-red colossus. Yet when sliced open, it was perfectly ripe. Its fragrance so strong it perfumed the entire field. The farmer admitted he almost missed it. Hidden under leaves, it lay like a secret treasure, waiting to be discovered. When word spread, families and journalists flocked to see it, marveling at a berry so big you couldn't eat it in one bite, or even 2. Think about it. One strawberry replacing an entire punnet from the store. One berry crowning a dessert all by itself. Proof that even the tiniest of fruits can rise to unexpected glory. But we're just getting started. Because the next 5 entries aren't just big. They're jaw-dropping. Number 10. The onion that could make a whole village cry. Onions are sneaky. They hide in almost every dish. Soups, stews, sauces, stir-fries. They add depth, flavor, character, but they also add tears. Slice one, and your eyes burn. So imagine an onion that could bring not just one cook, but an entire kitchen staff to tears. In the UK, master grower Peter Glazebrook unveiled a 17-pound onion. This wasn't a bulb you tucked into a grocery bag. This was an onion so massive it filled a basket all on its own. Each papery skin peeled back to reveal rings thick as bracelets. You could slide one around your wrist and wear it as jewelry. When displayed at a fair, people leaned in cautiously, as though it might release a cloud of sting so powerful it would make the whole hall cry. Judges posed beside it, smiling nervously. Children reached out to touch it, their hands vanishing against its surface. But here's the fascinating detail. This onion wasn't random. Peter had studied soil like a scientist, tweaked fertilizers like a chemist, and nurtured this onion like a parent raising a child. Every layer, every ounce was intentional. And that's the lesson. Even the most overlooked kitchen staple can become extraordinary when given care. But onions don't hold the crown alone. Because just a few feet away in the same soil, another humble root revealed itself. A potato that looked more like a family pet than food. Number 9, the potato the size of a dog. Potatoes are unassuming. You buy them in bags, scrub them, mash them, fry them. They rarely surprise you. But in Nottinghamshire, England, Peter Glazebrook, yes, again, unearthed a 10-pound potato so massive and oddly shaped that people didn't see food. They saw a creature. The potato was gnarled, bulging in odd places, curled like a sleeping animal. Journalists compared it to a Labrador pup curled up on the ground. Photos of people cradling it in their arms spread worldwide. At the local fair, visitors laughed, snapped selfies, and made jokes. Do we feed it or walk it? But beneath the humor was awe. Because the potato has been called a hunger crop throughout history. It sustained armies. It fueled revolutions. It shaped entire nations. To see it suddenly reborn as this monstrous, dog-like figure was both comic and reverent, a reminder of how much power is buried in the soil. And if potatoes can mimic animals, then jackfruit can mimic something stranger still. Alien armor dangling from trees. Number 8, the jackfruit that looked like alien armor. Jackfruit is impressive at ordinary size. Its bumpy green skin, its massive frame, its sweet fragrance that can fill an entire market stall. But when farmers in India recorded jackfruits tipping 120 pounds, they weren't fruits anymore. They were monoliths. Imagine standing under a tree and seeing one of these giants swaying above your head. Each one looked like a scaled weapon from a science fiction film, spiky armor glistening under tropical sunlight. A single jackfruit could outweigh a third grader. Inside, dozens of golden pods, each dripping with sticky sweetness, each the size of a child's fist. One fruit could feed a family for days. In some cultures, the jackfruit is cooked green, shredded to mimic meat. In others, it's eaten ripe, baked into sweets, or sold in bustling street markets. But there's more. Jackfruit isn't just a curiosity. It's considered a possible food of the future, drought-resistant, pest-resistant, and astonishingly productive. And when it grows to these titanic sizes, it's not just abundance, it's survival. But if jackfruit is the food of the future, radishes in Japan remind us of the past. Because one radish grew so huge, villagers didn't eat it. They worshipped it. Number 7. The radish that could break a table. Radishes are usually quick, crunchy, bite-sized. But in Japan, a farmer once pulled up a 70-pound radish that stunned an entire village. It was thick as a log, its skin caked in soil, its roots trailing like a beard. When placed on a wooden table, the wood groaned under its weight. Children posed next to it and looked tiny. Farmers bowed in respect, as though it were a sacred object. And for good reason. In Japanese culture, radishes symbolize fertility and vitality. A giant radish, then, wasn't just food. It was a talisman, a sign of abundance, of good fortune, of prosperity for the year ahead. The radish itself wasn't eaten right away. It was displayed, admired, almost revered. Villagers joked that even if you tried, it would take weeks to pickle or cook it all. But, as impressive as it was, the radish couldn't compete with the sheer fun of the next giant. Because zucchinis, when left alone, don't just grow. They transform. Number 6. The zucchini that grew into a monster. Zucchini is a gardener's joke. Leave one unharvested for a few days, and it doubles in size. But in Canada, a gardener neglected one just long enough for it to become a legend. The zucchini grew past ordinary, past oversized. It stretched over 8 feet long, a green baseball bat of flesh. Children who visited the garden didn't see food. They saw a toy. They picked it up, staggered under its weight, swung it around like a sword from a fantasy film. Adults posed with it as if holding a giant fish. And for days, the zucchini became the town's main attraction. Here's the strange truth. Giant zucchinis aren't the best to eat. They become tough, fibrous, watery. But they hold something more powerful than taste. Wonder. Proof that plants, given freedom, can outgrow every expectation. And with that, we've only scratched the surface. Because the next entries, number 5 through number 2, climb from playful surprises to fruits and vegetables that look like gifts from gods. Number 5, the broccoli that could feed a neighborhood. Broccoli has always been a polarizing vegetable. For some, it's a symbol of health, steamed, buttered, sprinkled with salt. For others, it's a dreaded green forest on the dinner plate. But in California, one broccoli grew so massive, it turned doubters into believers. At nearly 35 pounds, this broccoli didn't look like food anymore. It looked like a miniature tree canopy. Each floret wasn't bite-sized, it was fist-sized. The crown spread out like a green umbrella, dense enough to cast a shadow over the farmer's boots. When unveiled at a local agricultural show, people gasped. Children ran underneath the broccoli dome, pretending it was a fairy forest. Parents snapped photos. Food enthusiasts marveled at the sheer abundance of it. Enough florets to feed an entire school cafeteria. Here's what made it extraordinary. Unlike many giant vegetables that lose their flavor, this broccoli was said to be tender, flavorful, and perfectly edible. Imagine roasting trays of it, steaming mountains of it, stirring it into vats of cheese sauce. That single head could become an entire community dinner. And in a way, that's what it symbolized. Broccoli, the poster child for nutrition, elevated to a size that could nourish dozens. A vegetable transformed into a metaphor for abundance. But while broccoli resembled a forest, the next fruit became something else entirely. A golden treasure cradled in 2 hands, as if grown for royalty. Number 4. The mango too heavy to hold. In the tropics, mangoes are more than fruit. They're celebrations. Festivals erupt around them. Poets write about their sweetness. They're called the king of fruits, golden, juicy, irresistible. But in the Philippines, one mango grew to a size that even a king would have struggled to hold. Weighing 7.5 pounds, this mango was the size of a newborn baby. Its smooth yellow skin glowed in the sunlight like polished gold. When farmers carried it to the Guinness World Records office, They cradled it gently, as though transporting treasure. Cutting into it was a ceremony. The knife slid through its fragrant flesh, releasing an aroma so sweet and tropical that neighbors claimed they could smell it from across the street. The golden flesh filled an entire tray, glistening with juice, sticky enough to coat the hands of everyone who touched it. And then came the best part: sharing it. The family who grew it didn't hoard their prize. They sliced it into cubes, offered it to neighbors, laughed as children lined up for samples. The mango became a feast, a story, a memory for the entire community. In a way, this giant mango embodied what fruit is supposed to be: not just sustenance, but joy. But if a mango could glow like a jewel, the next entry was something raw, earthy, and primal. A beetroot that looked less like food and more like a beating heart torn from the earth. Number 3, the beetroot that looked like a boulder. Beets are humble. Crimson roots that stain your fingers, earthy in flavor, hidden beneath the soil. But in the UK, a farmer unearthed a beetroot that shook the ground. A 50-pound giant that looked more like a meteorite than a vegetable. It emerged from the earth caked in mud, round and heavy, its skin cracked like stone. Roots dangled from it like veins, giving it the uncanny appearance of a heart still tethered to the soil. 2 men strained to lift it, groaning as though hefting a boulder. Crowds didn't just see food, they saw symbolism. Beets have long been associated with vitality and strength. Ancient cultures compared their crimson juice to blood itself. Standing before this colossal beet, people said it looked like the heart of the earth, pulsing with life. And though it wasn't destined for the kitchen, its sheer bulk made it impractical to cook. It was destined for something greater, to remind us of the raw, hidden power locked beneath the ground. But if the beet was primal, the next fruit shimmered with elegance. A pineapple so grand, it looked as though nature had crowned it herself. Number 2, the pineapple that looked like royalty. Pineapples are dramatic even in normal form. Their golden scales glisten under the sun. Their leafy crowns rise like spiked helmets. They're fruits that demand attention. But one Australian farmer grew a pineapple that commanded respect on a royal level. It weighed 18 pounds, triple the weight of a grocery store pineapple. Its crown stretched nearly a foot tall, a spiky green crest that looked like it belonged on a warrior's helmet. Farmers who first laid eyes on it didn't see food. They saw a throne. When sliced open, the pineapple revealed a radiant yellow flesh so aromatic, locals said the smell drifted through the farmyard. Its juice poured freely, enough to fill pitchers, gallons of sweet liquid gold. It wasn't just a snack, it was a banquet. Historically, pineapples were once so rare in Europe that they were rented out as centerpieces at royal feasts. People didn't eat them, they displayed them, symbols of wealth and luxury. To imagine that history magnified in this oversized fruit was almost poetic. The crown jewel of the tropics, returned in giant form. One pineapple could supply a party, a feast, a celebration. And yet, it was only number 2. Because waiting at number 1 was not just a fruit, not just a vegetable, but a colossus. Number 1, the squash that could feed an army. We've climbed through forests of broccoli, forests of cabbage, lakes filled with pumpkins, and jewels of strawberries. But nothing compares to the titan of the vegetable kingdom, the giant squash. In Massachusetts, farmers revealed a squash that tipped the scales at over 2,100 pounds. To put that into perspective, that's heavier than a grizzly bear, heavier than a grand piano, heavier than a small car. When it was unveiled at the fair, the crowd went silent. Then came the wave of gasps, laughter, applause. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Some compared it to a fallen boulder, others to a giant loaf of bread baked by a mythical giant. Children stood in front of it and looked like action figures. Moving it was an engineering project. Farmers rigged straps around its pale orange body. Cranes lifted it. Forklifts rolled it across the field. People gathered just to watch it being transported, as if witnessing a parade float made not of paper and wood, but of living, breathing squash. And what was inside? Enough flesh to cook thousands of bowls of soup, enough to fill bakeries with pies, enough to roast into slices that could feed an entire town. If one squash could supply food for hundreds, imagine what a field of them could do. But here's where the magic lies. This wasn't grown in some futuristic lab or with exotic technology. It was soil, sunlight, water, patience. The same recipe every gardener uses, only scaled up with relentless care and ambition. Standing before it, people didn't just think about food. They thought about possibility, about what's hidden in seeds, about what else nature might reveal if we dared to give it room, time, and attention. That's why this squash isn't just number one for its size. It's number one because it embodies the spirit of this entire list. The moment when the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. From a strawberry that fit into two hands, to a carrot that stretched like an orange serpent, from a pumpkin raced across a lake, to a squash so large it became a monument. Each of these giants tells a story about how much wonder still lives in the soil beneath our feet. A story about human patience, curiosity, and joy colliding with the untamed power of nature. They remind us that limits are illusions. A watermelon doesn't have to stop at 20 pounds. A carrot doesn't have to stop at a foot. A squash doesn't have to stop at sanity. With the right conditions, the ordinary can shatter expectations. But more than that, they remind us of something deeply human. Because every giant fruit or vegetable in this list sparked the same reaction: awe, laughter, delight. People gathered, pointed, took photos, celebrated. In those moments, food wasn't just fuel. It was magic. It was community. It was wonder. So the next time you slice into an apple, peel a potato, or snack on a strawberry, pause. Imagine the secret inside that seed, the potential waiting, sleeping, silent. Because if a cabbage can grow bigger than a child, if a pineapple can wear a crown worthy of kings, if a squash can rise like a monument in a field, then what else might be possible in nature and in you? The giants of the garden aren't just records to be broken. They're reminders that the world still has surprises left, and that sometimes the most ordinary beginnings can grow into something truly extraordinary.